I know Tony Yayo since I was a kid, yeah. He was signed to not signed, because they wasn't signed, but they was in an underground group called Rags to Riches. It was him, Fat Shy, AKA DJ Rough Hands, God bless the dead, and my man Katif, God bless the dead. They call him Huey P.
Do you remember how you guys met? Did you guys go to school together?
No, we ain't go to school together. Yayo like 10 years older than me. We ain't go to school together. We met on the block.
Busbuster is back again, guys. A man named Domination is putting OG Unit business on full display in his conversation with Cam Capone. During that interview, he opens up about several moments tied to 50 Cent Circle, including an incident involving Tony Yayo, along with his version of what led to 50 Cent being shot and the reasons behind it. He does not hold much back. What stands out even more is the obvious resentment in his voice when Tony Yayo's name comes up. Hearing him talk, you can tell he has a deep issue with the idea of Tony Yayo being viewed as some kind of respected older figure to him. That reaction is surprising.
What would you think? What would you say your wildest situation growing up there?
The wildest situation? Man, I don't think that's for the camera. Come on. So there was a time that we was on the block and a dude walked through with his girl, and he walked through a whole bunch of dudes because our block is, any given day, is flooded. It's not like that now.
Especially because a lot of people have long seen Tony Yayo in a very different light. For years, Tony Yayo has often been looked at as someone who carried a certain level of respect in the streets. His name usually did not come attached to public embarrassment, strange controversies, or stories that damaged his reputation in a major way.
But it was 20, 30 guys on the block, and when the guy walked by, dudes threw a duck sauce at his head. And it was in retrospect, it was corny, but everybody was laughing about it. I really wasn't jacking it, but that's one of the scenarios, but.
Okay, what happened after you guys threw the duck sauce at him?
I mean, what you gonna do? You got 20, 30 people.
Most of the time, people spoke on him like he was solid, consistent, and not known for doing foul things out in the open. Across all these years, there has not been much public dirt that really stuck to him in a serious way.
What is the dude really gonna do? It was really like some bully, so I really didn't respect it, right? But that's one of the wild situations, you know? But there's other situations that it been dice games, like Tony Yayo was at a dice game. He was rolling dice with somebody and left. He got smacked. Guns came out. It was a Wild Wild West situation.
That is what makes Domination's attitude feel so unexpected. His disgust seems personal, and it clearly runs deeper than just a casual disagreement. He doesn't sound like someone simply offering criticism. He sounds like someone who has been carrying frustration for a long time and is finally choosing to unload it in front of the camera. If you don't already know about the history between Domination and 50 Cent, there is a lot behind this tension. Their issues did not come from nowhere, and this is not one of those little rap disagreements that faded away with time. The conflict between them has been serious for years, and once you look into the background.
In the studio with 50, Rough Hands used to have a studio in his basement. It was like a makeshift studio. It didn't really produce the best quality, but we was there. Like 50 would record his thing, right? Nothing to do with us. He's just from our block. And we used to go record our parts. We was 134 All-Stars, right? There was a particular moment that I recall that there was an artist named.
It becomes easier to understand why there is still so much hostility attached to these names. That context matters because it explains why this interview feels loaded from the start. Domination is not speaking like an outsider repeating rumors. He is talking as someone who clearly believes he has lived close enough to the situation to tell his side with confidence. Whether viewers agree with him or not, the energy of the interview is intense because he presents these stories like long-buried truths finally being said out loud. Even when the focus turns away from 50 Cent for a moment.
Storm P, right? And this was after 50 got stabbed. There was an artist named Storm P. I was in the studio. My man Dre Product was in the studio. Doc Intelligence was in the studio. A dude named Gangsta Lou from London was in the studio. We was all there chilling, right? We was doing the mastermind.
Smurf was there?
Smurf was there. Yeah, Yayo was there and Banks was there, as a matter of fact. Also, yeah, they was on that, but Banks wasn't Banks at the time. He was Lazy Lloyd.
The tension does not disappear. Tony Yayo remains a major point of irritation for him, and that frustration hangs over the conversation. Domination makes it clear that he does not share the public image many people have built around Yayo. In his view, that reputation does not match what he believes or what he has experienced. Before the discussion moved on from Tony Yayo entirely,
he wasn't dealing with 50 at that time, right? So we go to the studio and whatnot. We waiting to record. There's a dude named Storm P. He's from Baisley Projects. He actually ended up being managed by Superstar J. I don't know if that's still true to this day, but he was nice. He was doing this beat. I don't recall the beat, but his bars was hard. I recall the bars. He said,
Domination started telling a story about a moment when Tony allegedly got slapped during an altercation. The way he brings it up is meant to challenge that polished image and shake the idea that Tony Yayo was always untouched or unquestioned. It is one of those stories designed to grab attention immediately because it goes directly against the version of events many fans have accepted for years. Taken together, the interview is less about random gossip and more about someone trying to tear down a long protective narrative around 50 Cent's camp. Domination is presenting his version of the truth with clear emotion.
I dodge potholes, man, so I don't my rims. You dodge puddles, so you don't your Timbs. And I was like, whew. He was young at the time, like I aged 18, 17, around that time. I'm like, oh, this nigga's nice. He's like, he was spitting that pain. So 50 came in the studio while we was in the studio and he heard that and he said, yo, who beat is that? Like, yo, I'm jumping on that.
And whether people believe every detail or not, he is forcing listeners to revisit names and moments that have carried a certain mythology for a long time. Seriously, a dice game is the story you lead with? That's why the whole thing starts to feel a little shaky.
He ain't even asked Boy that actually did the beat. He just said, yo, I'm jumping on that. So the engineers let him jump on the track. He said, rumor last year, 50 got bagged. Rumor this year, 50 got stabbed. What's the rumor next year, huh? 50 got mad and tore Jai head off with the 4-4 mag. He said something about,
if someone asks for the wildest moment you've ever lived through, and your first example is that you and your crew tossed candy at somebody, that doesn't exactly sound unbelievable.
Black, my baby moms are wild out and stabbed me worse than that, you know? So that was the issue, of course.
It sounds minor. Plenty of suburban kids have done things just like that and called it a weekend. There's nothing in that story that makes you stop and think, wait, what? Now compare that to the Tony Yayo story. That one immediately sounds like the kind of incident people would bring up first if it actually happened the way it was described.
Storm P was from Baisley, so 9 times out of 10, his management team was from Baisley. Supreme is from Baisley, right? I'm not privy to what happened after that, to what happened if Preem called 50 or not, or what was being said. I'm not privy to that. I do know that after that studio session, the next day, I went to the block.
If you really had a moment involving Tony Yayo getting slapped and weapons suddenly coming into the picture, why would that not be the opening story? Why start with something harmless and forgettable?
Around 12 o'clock, something like that. And they like, yo, 50 got shot earlier. So we all go to the back blocks. It's taped off. So we actually honestly thought he was dead. We didn't know he made it. We thought he was dead, you know?
Then later jump to a situation that sounds 100 times more intense. That's the part that raises questions. Because when people tell stories from their past, especially the ones they claim were the craziest, they usually lead with the biggest one right away. They don't warm up with a candy throwing story and then casually slide into a much more explosive situation afterward.
He saw it, so he ain't say nothing. But when I turned around, I'm like, yo, who this? I seen somebody jumping out the car. He seen the car, but he didn't see the person jump out the car. That's what I mean. I asked him, yo, who this? He like, I'm waiting for a response. And the response I get was, oh, so I'm like, oh,
The order matters. It makes you wonder whether the details are getting rearranged, exaggerated, or maybe remembered in a way that doesn't fully add up. So at this point, it's fair to be skeptical. The sequence alone makes the whole thing feel a little off. If the Tony Yayo situation was real and as dramatic as it sounds,
when I turned, niggas started shooting. So I forgot the car was in reverse. I'm thinking the car's in drive. So when I step on the gas, I hit their car. Thinking that I was gonna go forward, I went backwards. So when I went backwards, I hit my head. That froze me. But 50 said he didn't get shot to this point here when they froze me.
common sense says that would have been the first example out of anyone's mouth. That would be the headline story. That would be the one you mention immediately, not the second one, not an afterthought. Then there's the larger relationship behind all of this. At one point, he, 50 Cent, and Tony Yayo were all extremely close. Not just casually cool either. They were tight in a way that made it seem like everybody was on the same page. That history is what makes the fallout even more interesting, because once bonds like that break down, the stories around them usually get complicated fast. From what I understand, the split between him and 50 Cent really came to a head over bond money.
That's when the gunman came around the car and he shot us. But in that process, the girl was screaming. She like, drive, drive. So that's what woke me up. And I drove down the block and I drove him to the hospital.
Okay, and so did you reverse the car at all after you kind of started to take off?
I just told you I had the car in reverse. I said that.
The claim is that 50 refused to cover his bond, and that decision became the turning point. Once that happened, the relationship apparently wasn't the same anymore. Tension that may have already been building suddenly had a clear reason attached to it. After he got out, things didn't just quietly fade away. Instead, it turned into one of those moments people remember because it played out publicly. They ended up arguing over the phone on the radio, and that confrontation stuck with people. If I remember correctly, it happened on Hot 97. That's a major detail too, because public radio arguments have a way of freezing a falling out in time. Once something like that happens on a platform that big, it's no longer just personal drama behind the scenes. It becomes part of the story forever. Everybody hears it. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody starts connecting old moments to the new tension, which brings it back to the original question. If there really was a wild Tony Yayo incident sitting in the middle of all this history, why wasn't that the first thing mentioned? Why lead with a lightweight story and save the heavy one for later? That's why the story doesn't land cleanly. It's not just about what was said, it's about how it was said and in what order. And once that starts standing out, it becomes hard not to question the rest. At that point, he and 50 Cent were extremely close. Because of that, he had direct access to the kind of behind-the-scenes history people always talk about but rarely know in full. One of the biggest stories tied to that era was the conflict between 50 Cent and Supreme, along with the chain of events people believe pushed that situation to a breaking point. Around that time, 50 Cent was moving with a very aggressive mindset in the music scene. He was focused on making noise, getting attention, and challenging just about anyone in his path. His name was starting to ring out, he had already dropped How to Rob, and he was building momentum by being bold, confrontational, and impossible to ignore. That approach was becoming part of his identity.
Okay, let me explain that. Sorry, bro. Let me explain a little bit better. So, you guys start to take off. At any point, did you guys, like...
Oh, yeah. I see what you said, yeah. I did reverse back. When 50 told me he had a gun, I did reverse back. I didn't think you wanted me to say... I see what you did. You went and you seen what I said before. All right, yeah. I had a gun. Yeah, we had guns in the car. I backed up. I said, yo, I was going to go back to shoot.
During that stretch, he ended up in the studio and jumped onto a record without fully understanding the politics around everyone involved. From his perspective, he was simply a rapper hearing a strong track and deciding to add his energy to it. On the surface, it probably felt normal. You walk into a room, see familiar faces, recognize people you know, and assume everything is fine. If there are people around you that you trust, or at least people connected to people you trust, you naturally think the situation is solid. Except it wasn't. The record he got on came with baggage he either didn't fully know about or didn't take seriously in that moment. The artist behind that song had ties to the same neighborhood as Ja Rule, or at the very least to people closely connected to Ja Rule's circle. In an environment like that, where every move is watched and every collaboration can be interpreted as a message, that kind of decision was never going to stay quiet for long. News of it traveled by quickly. It reached Ja Rule. It also reached Supreme. Once that happened, the situation reportedly changed in a major way. What may have seemed like a simple studio move suddenly became something much bigger once it was viewed through the lens of existing tension, street loyalty, and personal rivalry. According to the story, that moment became the final spark. Not the entire cause by itself, but the incident that pushed an already heated conflict over the edge. There had already been pressure building. There were already issues, already bad feelings, already a sense that things were heading somewhere dangerous. This just added one more layer to it, and apparently it was the one that made everything snap. That is what makes the story so significant. It wasn't just about a song or a feature. It was about timing, relationships, and how quickly a music decision could turn into something much more serious in that era. One move in the studio could carry consequences far outside the booth, especially when major personalities, neighborhood ties, and unresolved problems were all connected. From the outside, it might look small. Inside that world, it clearly wasn't. What seemed like a casual decision ended up being remembered as the moment that changed the temperature entirely. And if the people close to the situation are to be believed, that was the point where everything truly broke. That moment appears to have been the tipping point. From the way the story is told, it seems like 50 Cent getting on that record set everything off and pushed the tension into a much more serious place. Here's how it sounds. Someone was in the studio, saw 50 Cent jump onto the track, and later carried that information back to Ja Rule, Supreme, or people in that circle. The message was basically, I was there. 50 got on the song, and this is what was said. He also made it clear he wasn't trying to be part of anything bigger. He was saying he didn't know what was going on beyond that. Honestly, it would have been hard for him not to say anything. Think about it. If he stayed quiet and the song eventually came out, people would have started connecting the dots. They would have recognized that someone close by, somebody regularly around the scene, had knowledge of what happened and never spoke up. In that kind of environment, silence could easily be taken the wrong way. Because of that, he told them what he knew. Even then, he apparently didn't reveal every part of the conversation. He didn't fully spell out all the details or explain every exchange that happened in the studio. Still, what he did share was enough. According to the account, that was the final spark. After hearing that information, the decision had already been made in their minds. By the next day, they were allegedly committed to going after 50 Cent in the most extreme way.
But he was already hurt, and Shorty was like, yo, take him to the hospital, take him to the hospital. So I took him to the hospital. I couldn't take hearing what she was saying. She was all hysterical. I had to get her out the car. So when I got her out the car, it was just me and 50. I wasn't from Queens, so I told him to stay up. Yo, you gotta direct me to the hospital. So he directed me to the hospital.
That's where the story takes a much darker turn. And it also opens up a bigger conversation about hip-hop culture as a whole. There's a real point being made here about how the culture treats its elders. Too many older figures who helped shape the game seem to reach a point where they feel overlooked, unsupported, or pushed to the side. When that happens, some of them end up sharing dangerous stories publicly, speaking on matters that probably should never be discussed so casually on podcasts and interview platforms. That kind of public storytelling can have serious consequences, especially when the subject involves violent incidents that were never fully resolved. This is not just old gossip or rap history for entertainment. These are allegations tied to a real case with very real legal weight. One detail people should not ignore is the issue of the law in New York. Attempted murder does not simply disappear with time there. There is no statute of limitations on that charge. That means if investigators ever gather enough evidence, the case can still be pursued, no matter how many years have passed. And that's what makes these comments so explosive. 50 Cent was shot 9 times. That is widely known. It has been talked about for years, referenced in music, interviews, and documentaries. Yet despite how famous that incident became, no one has been arrested for it. So when people casually revisit those events and start describing who knew what, who said what and what allegedly motivated the people involved, they are not just retelling rap lore. They may be touching an open case tied to one of the most infamous moments in hip-hop history. Viewed that way, this is much bigger than music industry drama. It's a reminder that some stories from that era are not buried in the past at all. They are still unresolved, still sensitive, and still powerful enough to shake people up the moment they are brought back into the spotlight. At one point during that interview, he basically admitted there were topics he wouldn't touch. That is exactly why this feels so confusing. If you already know some situations are better left alone, what made this one different? Why step into the story at all?
Honestly, I'm not even sure what the thinking was. From where I'm standing,
Were you shot at this time?
I didn't know I was shot until I got to the hospital.
Where were you shot at?
I got shot in my left hand. It went in and out.
You didn't even know you were shot for all that time driving and everything?
Nah, I ain't know I was shot. The way, like, it went through my flesh, like, it wasn't really like, it's like through right here.
this is why people keep saying we need to do a better job of taking care of our OGs. Too many of them seem desperate to stay in the mix, and when that happens, every old story suddenly becomes content. Every private moment turns into something to be traded for attention. Every memory becomes a way to land one more interview. That is what makes this look questionable. It starts to feel less like wisdom being shared and more like somebody trying to stay booked. Maybe that sounds harsh, and I'm not trying to come at him with disrespect, but let's be real for a second. Why are these stories showing up on podcasts? Why bring this kind of thing to a public platform in the first place? There's a difference between speaking with purpose and just putting everything out there because a microphone is in front of you. A lot of people have lived through important moments. A lot of people know things the public never heard. That doesn't automatically mean every detail needs to be told. Sometimes silence says more. Sometimes restraint shows more character than oversharing ever could. Still, I want to keep this fair. This is not hate. This is not me trying to tear the man down. From my side, it's still all respect and love. I'm just looking at the situation and asking the same question many of you are probably asking right now. Was this necessary? Did this cross a line? Or is this just how media works now, where nothing stays private if there's a camera nearby? That's why I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know how you see it. Does this come off as a bad move? Do you think this counts as talking too much? Or are people overreacting and reading too deeply into it? There are arguments on both sides, and I know everybody is going to view it differently.
One thing is clear though, moments like this always get people talking because they sit in that uncomfortable space between honesty and exposure. Some viewers will call it transparency. Others will say it looks like telling on people. That tension is exactly why this kind of interview spreads so fast. The second somebody says something they maybe should have kept to themselves, the whole conversation changes. If you made it this far, I've got another video you need to check out. Tap the one on the screen and see how this fake guru got exposed once again during a podcast appearance. Things went left fast when her co-host challenged her live, and the reaction was wild. She completely lost control of the moment after getting called out right there in front of everybody. You do not want to miss that one. Take a look around the screen because another video is waiting for you right here. If you enjoyed this one, that's the perfect place to keep the momentum going. I'm wrapping things up for now, so thanks for watching, take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.